Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Everything is Attitude. I'm here with Rosemary. Hello, Rosemary.
Hi, darling.
And I'm here with Jessica. Hello, Jessica.
Hello.
And Rosemary, would you like to sort of introduce what we're talking about today
Yeah,
and then we'll start the conversation?
absolutely. Well, as everyone can see, we've got a surprise guest here. Uh, we'll talk to you in a minute, Jess. You can tell us all about yourself in a minute. Welcome, Al. Welcome, Jess. This is our Everything is Attitude show. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Al Pisano. We are co-hosting as usual on this Everything is Attitude, and today we're going to be talking about what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about pets.
Yep.
We're going to be talking about. I have so many people emailing me all the time asking, "How do you know when your pet is? When if you have an animal who is."
She froze up a little bit, right? You still there, Jess? Yeah,
and
Rosemary,
and
Rosemary,
we
you
never know
froze.
what quite to do about them. We're going to talk about the reason for our pets, and some of the reasons that we have our pets, and we're going to be talking about pets in general, but specifically we are also going to be talking about what happens and what life recipes can we use to help us when that time comes for our beloved animals to leave us, and when we have that decision to make. I personally have lots of stories, Al. I know you do, and Jess, I know you have one or two stories as well for us. So we're going to be talking about we're going to be talking to you in a minute about your experiences. Um, but I think it's the same for most of us who have pets, and I think for most of us who have pets, they are our beloveds. I mean, I have a daughter and a grandson, and I know there are people out there, maybe there are even people listening to this show who are saying, what is this thing about pets? Why do people love their pets so much, and so on? But we do. I certainly do. I know, Al, you do. So we're going to be talking about, you know, the right way to let our animals go, if there is there a right way.
She froze again.
Should we or shouldn't we? Is it the right thing to do, and all of that? So let's go,
Rosemary,
Jess.
Rosemary,
Let's go
you
right to you, because I can see you nodding as you're listening to me and you're relating to some of the things I'm already saying. Let's go to you. Can you tell us first of all a little bit about yourself, and why did you come on the show? And I want to hear your story. If you have a story to tell us, you may be at this moment in time wondering, should you have you a pet that you put down, or maybe you've got an example of something like that happened to you in the past, and how you dealt with it, or what happens in the future if you've got a beloved little thing that what happens? What happens then? All right, let's go to you. This is the second sister we've had on this
yes,
show. It's becoming a first. It's becoming a family show, Al.
yes, it is. Yes. You know how my family is. They just move their way in, right?
So go ahead.
So,
Good, Al. Go.
so,
Let's
so
go over to
Jess,
you a little bit. Not sure if you can hear me.
I,
Actually, are
I
you
can't.
there,
Can you hear me, Rosemary?
Al?
It
I
doesn't look
think
like
he's
she can.
frozen on us. Um, I can hear you. Can you hear Al? No, I can't hear. I can't hear you, Al.
Jess, can you
So
ask Rosemary
all
to
I've got is
drop?
this frozen picture.
Can you ask
So
Rosemary to drop off and go
as
back
long as
on?
people out there can hear you and see you. I did.
Yeah.
If only
So
I knew how to drop off and come back on. I'll have a go. I'll have a go and see if I can do just that.
okay, and I'll talk in the
How do I
interim.
get out of it? You see, I don't even.
There she goes. All right. So, Jess, we have actually had a lot of those pets. We kind of co-parented a bunch of those pets throughout the years. And let's see, Rosemary's getting back in here. Let me just put her back in. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yes,
Good.
you were frozen on me. Was I frozen on you?
You froze a couple of times, so hopefully we're past the technical difficulties. So I was just saying to Jess, we kind of co-parented a lot of those pets along the way, and made a lot of those decisions together. But Jess, you were saying, really talking about a story with one of our cats that we lost recently. That you really were influential in having to make a decision about. It's a funny name, but his name was Mick Butterpants, right, Jess?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so Scottish, a little Scottish in there, or Irish maybe.
So just talk about what led you to kind of make the decision you made for McButterpants. Maybe talk about the history a little bit of having to make those decisions before, and what kind of led you to do it when you did do it for this most current time. Help birth them. Yeah. You had cancer, Jess, right?
Can I ask you how, how did you, well, I'll ask you that in a minute. Al, I know you've got a story about your animals too. Why don't you, tell us that story? Well, I know you've got lots of stories,
Yeah,
but
we do. I'll tell you that
I'm
the one
sure
that
you
was the
picked quite
most
a few
challenging.
out.
The most challenging was, I think, by far, and it was hard for you, Jess, too, as well, right? We had we got a pair of cats after we had cats for years, and they passed away. They lived long lives. But then we bought we actually adopted two brothers, two cat brothers, and probably about 6 months into the little black cat, Bagheera, we named him. He started getting like really lethargic and low energy and very like sickly looking. And we brought him in, and it turned out he had an issue with one of his valves in his heart that just wasn't opening and closing the right way. So they said it was a pretty bad. I think they called it a heart murmur, but it was basically the blood was just too much of the blood was flowing in. The valve was dysfunctional. So we ended up, trying medication on him, but at a certain point, Jess, could you do me a favor? Sorry, just drop out and come back in. They're saying they can't hear you, and I hope they heard all that you said. But they're saying they can't hear you. So you could drop out and come back in real quick, just while I tell this story. So we tried medicine on him, and he got a little bit better. But through the process, you could tell that even though he seemed a little bit better, the medicine it was making him not, who he was. He was just beautiful, energetic, playful, sweet little cat. And the medicine was just kind of taking everything out of him. And he had bouts in and out of the vet. So this went on for almost a year. And when he was about a year and a half old, really, he had deteriorated. He was really fatigued, really thin, just didn't look happy at all. And there wasn't a lot that they can do, because the medicine, as he grew older, became less and less effective. So we had this beautiful sibling of one of the cats we still have, Mowgli, a year and a half old.
I hope he's still there.
Yeah.
At the end of the show.
Yeah. Hopefully he is. He's actually laying right here. I get to. So we had to make a really, really tough decision. This is a year and a half, a baby, right? Cat. And we decided as a family to put him down, because like Jess, he kind of gave us that look. And I know not everybody sees that same look, but we had to put aside, every ounce of us was trying to keep him alive, because he was so young. He was just still a kitten, and we all just wanted to keep him alive desperately, and we tried. But in the end, we realized it wasn't the best thing for him, and it was so hard. This still gets to me to this day. So hard to do it, to put him down. And I talked to you about it, Rosemary, as well, and you gave me some great advice on it. But inevitably put him down, and we were good with it. We were at peace with it, because he was so miserable, just in his existence, that it just wouldn't have been fair in our minds to keep him going in and out of vets, and just being in existence, but not really being happy at all. So we ended up putting him down, but it was very challenging.
Well, I think, when we lose our pets, or when we're faced with the loss of our pets, I think it's very, very tough for any of us, because we become invested. I'm going to tell you now a story about you guys are into cats and I'm into dogs.
We're into both. We have dogs too, but yeah.
I know you have dogs too. But I have to tell you that, just because I have dogs, I'm going to admit something now that I don't usually tell to the world. But I have to say that I'm not a dog person, in that I don't love all dogs. I can hear everyone now gasp, "Oh my gosh," did she really say that? Now, I like most dogs, but like people, there are some I love and there are some I like, and there are one or two that I maybe don't like at all. So I'm always loath to say that I'm a dog lover, but I am a dog person, and I have dogs myself. Well, I had a dog. Her name was Rosie. We rescued her, and she was extremely badly treated, and the guy who owned her thought it would be great to train her using one of those electric collars, but which actually can be effective if you know what you're doing, I suppose. But he had actually, instead of putting the electric collar around her neck, he'd apparently put it around her hips. And every time she went to jump, or every time he was trying to train her, he must have been very trigger happy with this thing, because basically she ended up with damaged nerves in her hip. Anyway, fast forward, we actually rescued her. The guy who owned her didn't want her anymore, couldn't handle her anymore, so we took her, and she became completely and utterly my dog. When you get a dog who's been massively ill treated, and then you then somehow you make a connection with them, don't you? You sort of have this incredible and beautiful connection that you can't really explain to people who've never had it. But you look at the dog looks at you, you have this sense and this feeling, and it's all about the energy. And of course, she was actually an earth sign, so she and I connected really, really well. But there was a point during all of this, and she was very vicious with other people. She was a gentle, gentle soul with me, but never test her. You could never leave her with anyone. I could never trust her if we had a party or if we had few people to dinner. I would have to put her away somewhere because she just became so protective of me and so aggressive of anyone around me that I always made sure that she was, out of the way. And I was looking at her one day, and you have these feelings about your animals sometimes, and of course it helps to be a little bit psychic as well. And I looked at her one day and I thought, she needs a friend. She needs someone. She needs something other than me to help her get over this, this aggressiveness and so on. Anyway, fast forward again. I decided, with some help from above, that I was going to look for a chocolate Labrador. My animal trainer at the time, Fred, who was fantastic, said, whatever you do, do not get a chocolate Labrador. You can't do that. And that's exactly what I did. But so I went to trying to move this story along quickly because I want to get to the crux of it. But I searched and searched, finally found the only guy at that time, it was just before Christmas time, who had a litter. He had 3 puppies and left out of the litter, but they were all sold. But there was 1 puppy left out of a litter of 8. But that little guy, that puppy, was way, way down, long drive away from us. So we went to look at the puppies that had been sold, and I took one look at them, and I took one look at the sire of these puppies. And the reason I've told you I'm not a dog lover is because I just took an instant no, they're not for me. And the sire, beautiful animal, gorgeous, and the puppies were gorgeous, but just not for me. So it was Christmas Eve, and we had already said that we would, want to look at the little puppy, but it was like a 3-hour drive away to get to where this puppy was. We were meeting in the middle, and it was before the days of cell phones, so we couldn't call the guy to say, sorry, but this puppy's not for me. So I will tell you, my daughter was in the car with me, and I'm driving down. I was with a boyfriend at the time as well. We're driving down there, and the entire way was probably 2.5 hours or something drive through rain, snow, freezing cold, and all the bad weather that you can imagine on a Christmas Eve. We were heading to the Massachusetts Turnpike, and it was awful. And all the way there, I was moaning and complaining. Oh God, if I'd have known, and if only we could have caught him before he left home, because we tried to, and he'd already left. So we were obligated to go tell him. And I just was saying, I was revving myself up to say, I'm sorry you've driven all this way, but this puppy's not for me. We get to the Massachusetts Turnpike. It's pitch black. It's dark as dark can be. I don't know if you've ever been to the Massachusetts car park, but there's barely any lights. You can't see anything. So we pull into the car park. Now we have to find a black truck in blistering weather, freezing cold, snow, ice, all the rest of it. There's no way we can do that, right? There's just no way that you can find this black truck in this sort of miles of car park. So my boyfriend is driving, and at some point I say, look, just pull up here. And he pulled in front of another car, truck, whatever it was. Couldn't see. And I'm peering through the windscreen. This is, honest to God, a true story. I'm peering through the windscreen. You can barely see the car. But somehow or another, I knew my puppy, the one I'd been complaining that I didn't want for 2.5 hours, my puppy was in that car. I just knew it. And I said to my daughter and my boyfriend, he's in there. And don't be ridiculous. How you can't see? We're looking for a at this point, I am out of the car. I got out of the car. I went in front of our car to the passenger side of this other car. And I opened, and you couldn't even see then whether it was blue or black or what the color of the thing was. And I opened the door, and the guy sort of looks at me. I opened the passenger side door, and there was a box on the seat. I said, "Did you bring my puppy for me?" And he said, "You must be Rosemary." I said, "Yes." So he comes around, he hands me.
Oh no.
No, she froze.
She did.
It's she wants everybody in suspense. Hopefully she comes back. I mean, everybody's going to be dying to hear the end of the story now.
We should probably add that we don't recommend going up to strangers' cars and opening.
No, the little disclaimer, right? All right, so let me just tell her that she is frozen. Jess, while that's happening, can you retell, because I don't think everybody heard this story, your intro, I don't think anybody heard, but I don't think anybody heard the story about McButterpants. So you could retell that quickly?
Okay, so I'm guessing none of it was heard?
It doesn't sound like it.
Okay. And do we have confirmation that I'm heard now?
Yeah, if we could confirm that Jess is being heard in the comments, that'd be great. So go ahead, Jess.
Okay, so I will start. We were talking about McButterpants, who was one of our family cats, and also a cat who we helped give birth to when we took a stray named Mia. And Fatty and McButterpants were brothers. And we had them their entire lives, literally from the time they were born, along with a couple of other siblings. And McButterpants was the last of them.
Rosemary, Jess is retelling her story while you got cut off.
All right, well.
So just as we got to the best part, we're now going back to McButterpants and Fatty.
All right, so she'll finish the story, and then you can finish your story. We'll leave people in suspense, okay?
Just to let people know that I can't see either of you guys. I've got a black screen. So, but anyway, as long as
you could hear us,
I can hear you both. Yeah.
Okay,
can you
perfect.
See me? That's.
Yes, we could see you. Yes.
Okay, that's all right.
Lots of technical difficulties today, but Jess, go ahead, finish that story.
Okay, so after having all these kittens their whole lives, McButterpants stands out for me because it was the first time that I had to make a decision by myself. My brother and sister had moved away. We had just lost my father, and although I wasn't living home still, it was still our family cat, and my mom was still mourning the loss of our father, obviously. So he had a heart condition. He was taking medicine. We were giving him medicine 2 times a day for the heart condition. And he still looked healthy overall, which obviously made it a little more difficult. But I remember giving him the medicine one day and looking into his eyes, and he just looked at me with this sad, pathetic look where he was just saying, please don't force this medicine down my throat. Please don't do this to me. And he obviously hated it. White animal doesn't hate taking out medicine. But there was nothing we could do to fix it. And it was just one of those things where we knew it wouldn't get better. And the only option for him was to let him go and to prevent more suffering. And they had suspicions at that point, too, that there was also potentially cancer within him as well. So to me, it became an obvious decision, but I know that's not the case for everybody because he still looked healthy, even though he was looking into my eyes, telling me that he was ready to go.
And just to emphasize, he already had started to deteriorate, but he wasn't to a point where he was in pain or really miserable. But you made that decision to stop it before it went into where he was in agony, where he was in pain, where he was suffering, correct?
No, I think that's a very important thing to say also.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I knew him well enough. I mean, when it's your pet, your cat, your dog, your pet, you know their personality well enough to know that there's something off.
Yes,
Um,
people don't always want to recognize that though, Jess, and this is what we're going to be talking about in a little while. Where
So
did I
so
get?
you ended up. It was Rosemary. It was like a perfect. Have everybody on their edge of their seat. The box was there. He was about to give the box to you, and you cut out. So you really
he
it was a
came
great.
around the
Okay,
other
so
side
I
of the
opened
car.
the
That's
door
that's where you cut out.
okay.
So go ahead.
Okay, so I open the door, I see the box. I can't see anything in the box. Remember, it's pitch black. Even though I'd opened the door and there was an interior light, it's still black. I can't see anything. The guy gets out of the car, comes around to me, and he reaches into the box and he hands me this little thing. And I put him to my shoulder, into my neck, and he just nuzzled right in. It was as if we both knew it was, and it sounds very dramatic, this, but actually we just both felt we were home at that point. And now I was talking to the guy who was explaining what I should feed him and what his diet had been and so on. And my daughter's sitting in the car thinking, why is it taking so long for her to tell this guy that she doesn't want this puppy? And eventually she got out, my boyfriend got out, and I'm discussing diet and so on. And my daughter looks at me and she said, so I take it we're taking him home then. So now we drive back. I've got the puppy. I've no idea really what he looks like. Now we're sort of going home. By this time, it's somewhere past midnight. So we're now into sort of Christmas Day, early in the very early hours of the morning. And now we have another issue, which is, what is Rosie going to do? Because she's very aggressive with other animals. She's very aggressive sometimes with people. She doesn't, she's a very temperamental thing. And I decided I'm going to put her on the kitchen floor, and I'm going to put the puppy on the kitchen floor. I'm going to stand back and hope she doesn't kill the puppy in 2 heartbeats. And we put the puppy on the floor. I think it helped because it was only a baby, it was only 8 weeks old. And she sniffed him and she looked around him and she walked around and she sniffed him some more and she nudged him a bit, and he just lay on his back with his paws up in the air in a totally submissive, stance. Those puppies were where you found one, you'd find the other. Rosie took him as her baby. She became a pussycat. She would run to the door when people came to the door. She'd run to the door and wag her tail because she would want to be recognized. Because this little puppy, Labrador puppy, his name was Nino, which means little boy, and he was my little boy. And people would say, if you can't find Rosemary, look for Nino, and if you can't find Nino, look for Rosemary, because he just was everywhere with me. With Rosie, she had cancer. She had a tumor in her paw. It was really a hard decision, and we ended up having surgery for her. She had a leg off, she had a shoulder off. Aside from the cost of it, because we know how expensive it is to have surgery and medical attention for our puppies, I vowed never to do it again. Having said that, I know there are a lot of people out there with really miracle stories who have wonderful, wonderful stories of surgeries and treatment and so on that really does work. I'm just saying, for me, I would never ever put a puppy through what Rosie went through for that. And I think it was something like 8 months later, she actually died. She died very peacefully at the end, but it was tough. And as a healer, it was tough for me to see her and to hold her and to give her healing when you see the scar and the rawness of the surgery and so on. It was tough. With Nino, I had him until he was 15 years old. He was healthy and well until one day, very, very tragically, I was traveling at the time, and he started sort of feeling a bit, down in the dumps, not wanting to get up and go outside. and the friend who was taking care of him for me called me. I was there within 2 days. Called me to say that they'd taken him to the vet, and the vet thought he'd got cancer, and he deteriorated. As soon as he saw me, as soon as I went in there, he was able to get up, walk around for a few days. But I knew I couldn't. Again, I'm going to say what you two guys have said. You have to look to see what is best for the animal. And for 15 years, I'd had that little puppy with me, and he was mine in the strangest of ways. I mean, he'd been brought to me in the strangest of ways. He was there for Rosie, and he was there for me. And it's so very, very hard to make that decision. I called Samantha, she was in New York, and I said to her, you'd better come up because he's only got a few days. She came up, we stayed with him for a few days, and then she came with me when I took him to the vet. And it was the hardest decision. But again, if you know your animal and if you're sensitive enough to the animal, you can tell when it's time. However, having said that, it's very, very tough for people, because that might be your only friend. It might be your only companion. You might be someone who doesn't have children, or you don't have grandchildren, or you're living on your own, and this is the only little thing that you've got there. And it's very hard to let go and to say, I've got to think of this animal rather than I've got to, because you want to hang on. You want to hang on to this precious, precious thing that you have between you. Jess, it's hard to talk to you both actually because I can't see you, but anyway, I'm going to keep going with this anyway and hope that you can still see me. You talked about how hard it was, but you went through it, and Al, you were talking about your kitten that you lost. Now, we talked about it being very close to the time when you had lost your father, so it was like double pain or double whammy, if you like. Very, very tough. And I know that this hasn't been that long ago because your dad hasn't been gone that long, right?
About a year and a half, almost 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So so this is still, very fresh with you. But Jess, can you tell us, if you were to advise other people going through this, if you were to advise them about, their attitude, what ingredients would you want to put in a cake? What ingredients do you think you need in order to not only make the decision to go through with it and then to deal with the after effects of, sometimes wondering, did I do the right thing or didn't I, and so on. What would you advise for other people?
So I don't know if it's an ingredient or something that you need to leave out of the recipe, but for me it was almost taking myself out of the equation and taking my own emotions out of the equation, because I knew I would miss McButterpants and I knew it would be hard to let him go. And
well, that is
looking at what's best for him.
I think we're talking about selflessness.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the ingredients would be selflessness, being, trying to think of or putting someone else or someone else's comforts and pain above your own, or, in front of your own. And that requires, selflessness, which is what we try to do if we truly love someone, or we truly love our animals. That's what we try to do them, although all we want to do is hang on to them. I mean, I don't want to say that this is the same as, the decisions to take our loved ones off of life support. If you have a mother, a brother, or somebody who's been involved in an accident who's on life support, and you have to make that decision for them, it's a bigger issue, which we are going to talk about at another time. We're going to try to help with that one. But, it's sort of the same sort of thing, as making that decision and you've got to be selfless. So that is a great ingredient. Al, can you think of another ingredient?
Yeah, I think Jess alluded to this a little bit, but maybe even before the selflessness, being able to look at it from objectively stepping back and
Well,
really objectively looking at it, right?
that's actually the method we're going to use to to make the cake.
Right.
That with this ingredient of selfishness, how are we going to mix that up? What are we going to do with
Right.
that ingredient that we need? And yes, at that point, then we have to. But first of all comes the ingredient. The selfishness is the ingredient. Selflessness, should I say, is the ingredient there. And stepping back is the method that we try to use to make sure that we are selfless in our decisions. So can you think of another ingredient that we might have? I can think of a huge one. So I'm going to help you guys out here, because I think, we have to be selfless. That's one of the ingredients. And we have to have an abundance of love. And as much love as we can put into this cake is going to make the difference, because it's not just, love of our love for them, their love for me. It's having enough love in the mix to be able to deal with your own pain, and at your expense, actually loving that animal, that creature enough. Can you think of another ingredient, either of you, that we would put into this mix?
Jess, anything else?
I'm thinking as an ingredient. I mean, just putting them first.
While you're thinking of that a little bit, I'm going to tell you a very, very short, very brief story of there's a lady in New York City. I was with my daughter. We were walking with my grandson was in his stroller at the time, young, and we decided to stop outside of a pub and have a drink. So we were sitting on a bench, and along came a lady who had two dogs, both of them also in a stroller. And she was telling the story of how one of the dogs was paralyzed from the waist down, and I can't remember what was wrong with the other one, but neither of them could walk. And I'm listening to the story, and she obviously worships the ground these animals walk on and so on. And I've seen dogs who have those fabulous little harnesses that they put, so they walk on the front legs, and they have a harness for the back leg, and so there's so many things that you can do to help your animals. I had a three-legged dog. You'd never know that she was three-legged. She ran around like she was a four-legged. Well, actually six legs. But when I was looking at these two dogs, one was fine. The other one, I can tell you absolutely, I knew in my heart that this little creature was miserable. But yet this woman was so thrilled that, she could trundle him around, and he couldn't get up, he couldn't walk, he couldn't go to the bathroom. She had to carry him everywhere and so on. And I do think another of the ingredients is that we do have to really understand that a dog is not a baby, a dog is not a child, a dog, a cat, a ferret, or whatever. I know how you have had ferrets as well. An animal, a creature that you love and you nurture. A dog is a dog and needs to be a dog. A cat is a cat and needs to run around. I had another friend whose cat was paralyzed, and she was crying and crying and crying to me while the cat could not move on the sofa, could not do anything for itself. And at one point I said to her, well, I want you to think here, ask this question: what kind of a life does this creature have right now? Is this the life that you want for this little thing? Is this the life it would want for itself? And if the answer comes back a resounding no, it isn't, get yourself off to the vet and do the kind thing and the good thing. Have an attitude of, you've got these ingredients. So you've got selflessness, you've got love, and you've got this asking the question, is this a life that this little animal would really want to live? And if the answer's, and you can't think the selflessness is this You can't think, but I can't let go, but I want. The selfishness is about what is best for this little thing. That is relying on you completely, because they can't take themselves off to the vet and say, hey, help me out here. We are responsible when we have our pets. We are responsible to do the right thing for them and to do the best thing for them. I've seen dogs who have been absolutely joyful in those little things with wheels on the back, and they've been joyful and happy and wagging their tails and all the rest of it, and they're happy. And I've seen little creatures who are miserable, miserable, miserable because their owners love them so much, there's no doubt of it, but they love them, in a suffocating way. I always say, to new mothers, and I'm a mother myself, and Al, you're a father. You can't. You need to mother your children. You don't need to smother your children. And so, when you're putting these ingredients together that we have, bear in mind and keep remembering, you're a mother. You're mothering. Don't smother mother.
Yeah, Rosemary, I would also, what I was saying before, I know it's part of the solution, but when you're being objective, when you're taking a step back, and even before you actually come to a solution or a resolution on what you want to do, know the facts and be informed. Talk to your vet. Look,
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
And we've actually asked the question. I know Al and I, on many occasions, have actually turned to the vet and said, "What would you do if it were your pet? If this were your dog? If this were your cat?" And when you're that open with them, a lot of times they're very honest with you about what that means. And I would add strength as another ingredient, because it does take a huge degree of strength to get yourself through this and make the right decision.
Without a doubt. And then once you've made that decision, and once you've made the decision, I remember coming home after I get very emotional even now when I think about it. I remember coming home. I left Nino at the vet, and my other puppy who's lying here on the sofa with me, Kachura, he worshipped Nino, worshipped him, thought he was. And we came home, got out of the car, and I'm going to say for well over a week or even 2 weeks, every time I came home, or every time we walked into the house, every time I took Churro for a walk, he'd run into the house and he'd be circling the car or searching the house, looking, searching for his mate. And that was tough too. So how you handle it, you take the selflessness, you take the love, you take that. What would this, if he could talk, if she could talk, what would this little creature say to me? Is this any kind of life? You take all of that and you mix it all up together, and then what you have to do. And once it's done and you come home, you can just look back and you can say, well, I thought it through, and I just know that it's the right thing to do. I know that it's hard for everyone. I know that it's a tough decision for everyone. But when you're making the right decision, your soul will speak to you. You'll just know that it was the right thing to do. And that's so, having the right attitude and looking with the right attitude towards these situations is very, very important. And as you've said, it's very, very important for people to understand, do your research, do listen to your vet. They don't always tell you the right thing, remember, but at the end of the day, listen to your heart. Listen to the heart of this little creature that you are responsible for. It is up to you to do the right thing for this little creature, because when you took this thing on, you took on the responsibility for life. and to give it the most powerful and the most positive and the happiest life you could possibly give it. We all know that our animals give to us far more than we give to them. That's how I feel about it. And, you know, having the right attitude when we're dealing with these situations is extremely important. Don't feel that you've got to be strong, cry as much as you like, but please do the right thing. Al, do you want to say very quickly anything more on this subject? Do we have any comments from anyone listening here that you'd like to share with us?
No, there were a lot of comments that they couldn't hear Jess at the beginning, but no other. Diana says love you to Jess. She had to run, but she was enjoying it. Nettie says aloha from, I guess, Hawaii. That's about it on the comments so far.
Okay, well, Jess, do you have anything else to add very briefly before we end this?
No, thank you for having me. It was a great discussion. You know, we had some technical difficulties, but
We did, yes. We have to
made it
apologize.
through.
I do have to apologize. I'm going to blame Al entirely for all of it because he's a techie. Just kidding. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being a part of the show. Jess, it was a real pleasure seeing you. I've not seen you for ages, so it's a real pleasure seeing you. And we hope everyone out there, thank you all for joining us. We hope that we've helped you a little bit. We've given you a little bit of a recipe to help you, those of you who are about to make the decision, those of you who just made the decision, those of you who will in the future make a decision. I'm looking at my puppy here, he's lying next to me, Cachorro, and he's getting on now. He's 14 years old, and it's a bit scary, but that's why you have them. And you know, when you have a pet, you know that at some point in the future you are going to lose them. And you take that responsibility on, and you have to follow through with it. So
But
I
you,
hope
keep-
you will
you, keep,
enjoy the
you keep
discussion.
their love, though, Rosemary, right? You keep their love.
Well, I'm lucky because I get to see my guys even when they're, you know, even when they're gone from me. I've had many of my puppies. One in particular I'm thinking of. His name is Karma, and he's been to see me. Rosie's been to see me. Nino's been to see me. I know it's not fair, everyone, but there it is. But just know, yes, absolutely, that they do. You know, they do come around us, and they do survive, just like the rest of us. This is what I believe, anyway. So if you need to know any more from us, if you'd like to participate in the show, it's info@everythingisattitude.com. If you have any comments or you need to know any more about me or Al, your email is alpisano at...
It's al@alpisano.com.
See, I forgot that one. al@alpisano.com, PISANO.
Correct, yes.
And of course, you can always email me, Rosemary, at rosemaryltaylor.com. Let us know your comments. If we can help you in any way, please let us know. We hope you enjoyed the show. Until next week, I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about next week, but you know, if you can watch out on Facebook, we'll notify you. If you want to be on my email list, so we can notify you, or Al's or whatever, you could, you know, just ask us to notify you, and you will be put on the list, and we will let you know in the next few days what our topic will be on Everything is Attitude for next Friday. Until we meet again, thank you, Al, very much. Jess, thank you for joining us, and to all of you out there, until we see you all again, please have a very, very blessed day.